on Describe TV. Today we're going to talk about subjects from our private investigative division. Many times we get requests from clients or questions from clients about what can be done in a case to gather information, what things are legal, what things are illegal, things like GPS tracking, things like secret spy cameras, things like pretexting, where you present yourself as an identity of another person to gather information. And we'll take a look at all those and find out what's legal, what's not legal, but more importantly, what are the best ways to get information? Many times, the instinct that a client or subject, or sometimes even an attorney might have, is to do something in a certain manner, use a certain method that not only is illegal, but might not even be the best way to get it. It might be the most expensive, longest, most difficult way to get the information. It might be much easier methods to gather the information. So in many cases, it has to do with some type of legal litigation. It could be a divorce. It could be a lawsuit. Sometimes it's a due diligence for a company. And one of the most common methods is what's called pretexting. And pretexting is when you present yourself to a party with a fake identity to get information. Good example. You put on a UPS uniform, you knock on someone's door with a fake package, so they open the door so you can see inside, right? That's pretexting. You're pretexting that you are the UPS person to be able to see inside of a house. Another one might be to call up and say, "Hey, I'm from the, power company. What's your water meter or what's your electric meter number?" Things like that, where you're presenting yourself as somebody. And that may seem innocent enough. We had a case a couple years ago where a client wanted to find out somebody's bank account number. It wasn't our client. It was a subject to a lawsuit. Let's put it that way. And they wanted to find out the bank account number for the person that they were suing. So what they did through their attorney, through an investigator, is they created a fake check. And the check said rebate $10. And it had US rebate company, PO box, whatever it was. And they mailed the check to this person. And the person got the check, and presumably what they would have done is sign the back of the check, deposit it in their account. And then when the check comes back to this client, it would have the account number on the back, because when you deposit a check, it puts your account number on the back. And then they would be able to have the account number, and presumably they would look up to see how much money the person had in the bank. Well, come to find out, that's illegal pretexting. There's a very important law called the GLB, Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, and that act was passed in the 1990s to prohibit illegal pretexting for the purpose of gathering private information. Now, you can pretext. You can tell somebody you're somebody else, but if you're using that lie to get information that's considered private, now it's illegal. And this all came from a case where a large company, was Hewlett Packard computer company, had a board member of their board of their company that was leaking private company information to the media, to the press, and they wanted to find out who it was. So what they did was they had a private investigator get the cell phone records for all the board members by calling up the cell phone company and said, "Hey, I'm Joe Schmo, send me a copy of my bill." And they did. And they used that to find out that one of the board members was calling up the New York Times or whoever it was, and that now they knew who it was. Turns out that was illegal, and they got sued. They lost a lot of money in the lawsuit. I think somebody actually had criminal prosecution. So here's another example of that. In modern day corporate due diligence, there's a company called Impossible Foods. And Impossible Foods is one of those companies that sells plant-based meat. Okay. And this company was doing some type of litigation against another company. And the Moti Food Works, which is the counterparty, found out that a private investigator was working covertly for Impossible Foods, allegedly. And what this private investigator was doing was going to Motif Foods and saying, "Hey, I'm this restaurant chain and I want to buy meat from you. So tell me about your product." And they were trying to get Motif Foods to give them private information about how their product was made, how their marketing was done, and using that information improperly. Um, Motif Foods was in litigation with Impossible Foods, right? And they had this undercover operation, and Motif found out that they were being approached by people going by certain names and claiming they were affiliated with a meal kit service called Food for Thought. So these investigators are saying, "Hey, we're this restaurant or meal service, and we want to get information about your product." They asked me if they could obtain raw samples of the food products because they wanted to touch and feel them, right? Fortunately, this party realized this is highly unusual and they turned it down. And they said, "No, we're not going to do this, right? This is not normally how this works." And they did some due diligence and found out that it was a private investigator. Here's another example of due diligence. A private investigator was found to have put a GPS tracker on a vehicle. And what happened was a consumer, private individual, found that there was a GPS tracker on their vehicle. And they were able to get records about that tracker and trace it back to a private investigator. The private investigator obviously didn't put it on for their own use, they put it on for a client. So what the court said was, you have to client. You have to name the client. So if you are a person who's hiring a private investigator, what's going to happen is if your investigator does something illegal, does something that's not proper, and the other party finds out about it, that investigator might have to reveal who you are. And in many cases, even if you didn't do that illegal thing directly, you may have liability under what's called vicarious liability, where if you hire somebody that does something wrong, you could be in as much trouble as they are. Even if it's just financial, you could be sued, right? And sometimes the criminal liability follows the action as well. So make sure that even if you think that this is a way to get the records or information you want, that you're not doing something illegal, even accidentally. And here's another example of where a company, large company, did something improper. Nissan, one of the largest car companies, they installed cameras on their COO, Chief Operating Officer, to watch their home. They installed security cameras at the entrance to monitor their activities. Whether that's illegal or not hasn't necessarily been established, but it's something that can make you have liability on the civil side. And some of the Nissan directors didn't even know this was happening. The law firm made this happen. So how could that come back to haunt you? Well, if you are using these cameras to monitor what's called private activity, meaning if the camera could see inside the house or inside of a car where you have an expectation of privacy, or using the information for harassment or for employment type actions, something that by itself may be technically legal, the use of it might be illegal. And that's one thing to keep in mind. An activity that a private investigator uses might on its face, on the surface, be legal, but if you use the information for something illegal, now the whole thing is improper. So think about what types of actions you would consider for an investigation that you would think, well, let me just have an investigator do this. and put your comments below of what those might be, and we can give you an idea of whether or not that would be proper. As a licensed private investigator, you don't want to jeopardize your license by doing something illegal. The bigger picture is most of the things that you would want to find out through some illegal method, there are better ways to find it out that are legal. The only reason why sometimes an illegal method is used is because that's all the investigator knows how to do. They may not know how to do the proper way, or the client may tell them, here's how I want to do it, and they just listen to the client. A good example is we had a contact from a prospective client recently who wanted to get information about their spouse, suspected the spouse was financially diverting funds from their marriage, and also that there was infidelity. So what they wanted to do was hack their phone. Look, I want you to tap into my husband's phone and find out where he's transferring money and who he's talking to. All right. So obviously, it's very clear you can't hack somebody's device. It's illegal. It's actually a federal felony. And so if the investigator did it, they would probably be on the hook. And the client who instructed them to do it would also be on the hook. Remember, we're not attorneys. We can't give you legal advice, but this is normally what happens. But we talked to the client more and said, well, if you want to find out if money's being diverted, there's better, cheaper, legal ways to do it than hacking somebody's phone, right? You can get financial records through other means, through OSINT, through other types of research and discovery, where you can get it directly and get better information. Even if you hack somebody's phone, all you're going to do is see a money transfer of $10,000 from one account to another. If you do that same type of research through OSINT or other methods, not only can you find out the amount, but you can find out the account holder that it went to, possibly. You may be able to find out other transfers that were done, maybe not through the phone, right? You can get more detailed information. It may take a little bit longer, a couple days longer, but it'll probably be cheaper than doing full hacking digital forensics on a phone. And then what about infidelity? Well, first of all, in most states, you don't have to prove infidelity to get a divorce, right? If you want to get a divorce, you can get a divorce without proving the other person is cheating. But even if you want to prove it, hacking somebody's phone is one way that's illegal that'll get you into trouble. There's other ways you can do it. There's vehicle telematics. Look, every vehicle nowadays has monitoring systems that track things like, did the passenger door open and close? Was there weight on the passenger seat? Remember, the airbags on your vehicle are activated only if there's a over 40, I think, or 50 pounds on the seat. So you can track that. You can track what gear it's in. You can track sometimes GPS where it went to. You can also do direct surveillance. In many cases, direct surveillance is cheaper than hacking a phone because digital forensics is very expensive. We perform digital forensics on, electronic devices all the time, but we do it where they're actually shipped into our laboratory and they're devices that are owned or controlled by the actual client, not somebody else's device we're hacking into illegally. But digital forensics is expensive. And it's in most cases cheaper just to follow somebody, to do eyes on surveillance, or to do what's called electronic surveillance, where you're watching activities online that are visible that may lead to the same conclusion. I get it. It sounds sexy and it sounds, sneaky and spooky to be able to do these hacking type things. But in the long run, what's going to happen is, even if you decide, I'm going to do it and I'll keep it quiet, you're not going to be able to help yourself. Most clients at some point blurt out, well, I hacked your phone and this is what I saw, in a moment of passion or when you're mad at the person. And that's going to get you into big trouble. Here's the other thing. When you think about doing something illegal, hacking, or something where you're going to hire a criminal, basically, you're also now subjecting yourself to risk of being defrauded. So if you say, I want to hack somebody's phone, you're going to look up and you find an ad for some hacker and they're going to say, pay me $2,000 and I'll hack the phone. Well, the fact that they're illegal, you have to pay them on Bitcoin. They don't have a legitimate address and license and phone number because they're a hacker. By definition, they're under the radar. Half of the people who are out there with those ads are just scammers. They just take your money and they never call you back, because what recourse do you have? You can't report them to the Better Business Bureau because they really don't care. They're already criminals. So the fact that people are desperate and they're really wanting to do some of these illegal activities put them at risk of being prey to scammers who try to capitalize and monopolize and take advantage of this desperation to do something illegal. Do yourself a favor before you consider doing something that maybe is sketchy or maybe you think is a good way to go. Consult with an investigator, and you can see on our screen there's a link for Actual Human, and you can create an appointment to consult with an actual licensed investigator, and they can give you your options. If after that you decide you want to go with a hacker, that's fine, but at least you'll know where you stand and what your options are. You might find that a licensed investigator can do something faster, cheaper than a hacker could without risk. Or you might decide, I still want to go with the hacker. That's fine. But be aware that these things always come out. Remember the story that I told you about, the check that was written for the fake rebate check? That was discovered by an investigator. That person who received the check, that fake rebate check, was our client. We were hired by an attorney to do some investigating for a court case, for a lawsuit, for litigation. And we always ask the attorney, and we tell them to tell their client, keep your eyes open for any unusual information. When you're in a court case, you want to be aware of anything that happens that's unusual and let us know. Even if something simple, car drive by your house, weird van parked on a corner, weird phone calls, weird mail, things on your computer. We give them a checklist of what to look for. And the reason why is because we know that a certain percentage of investigators and even attorneys do things that are illegal. And so this was on the list. Look for weird mail to come in. Then they said, I got this weird rebate check. So we knew right away by looking at the check and the address that it was a fake check, that it was from somebody trying to get their banking information. So what we advised them to do was open a new bank account at a different bank from where they normally bank, put $200 in it, and then deposit this check. And by depositing the check, now we can see where that check goes, what happens to it. And we did some backtracing and found that this company, that this fake rebate company that had a PO box in, let's say, Nevada, turns out it was really a private investigator in Colorado. We found that out. And we did some research on that investigator, and we found that they did a lot of work for the attorney representing the other party. So once we put all this case together, we gave it to our client, the attorney, and they put it out there in court and said, this, Your Honor, this other party is doing something illegal. And because of that, they were able to get sanctions. They were able to get a refund of some legal fees. And we believe that that investigator may have had a claim against their license. So these things will be found out because a smart investigator or smart attorney is going to be on the lookout for this happening to their client. So if you're in a court case, also do this kind of counter surveillance, this kind of counter investigation, keeping an eye out for things that are happening against you so that you can discover things that are illegal. A lot of times that, even if the other person had a good case and they were going to win the case, they had a prevailing set of facts, you finding out they did something illegal can blow their whole case out of the water. So keep that in mind. Glad to be able to have you for another video. Keep an eye on our channel. If you have any questions, put them in the comments or reach us at Actual Human.
Are you tired of automated systems and chatbots when you need assistance? Experience actualhuman.com and connect with real professionals, not automation. At actualhuman.com, we bring you a network of professionals who are excited to answer your questions and provide guidance. Getting started is easy. Let us show you how. Here's how it works. Step 1. Select the best date and time for your video call. Step 2. Describe your situation and the areas you're looking for advice. Step 3. Connect one-on-one with an expert and get the undivided attention that you deserve. Experience the difference.